Yeah.
So thanks everybody for giving us your wisdom, telling us your experiences. We saw in the chat so many people were enjoying the testimonies that you were given. And we've got a lot of questions that we want to answer now. So I'm going to start with, okay, this is a question for Kristen. The question is, what is the approach to reading that Masterbooks uses? How do students learn and apply those reading concepts?
We start off our reading program really in the preschool level. So we have stepping stones, and stepping stones is a developmental approach. What we don't, when we think about reading, we often think of learning our letters, learning the sounds of the letters, phonics, and all sorts of things like that. What we don't realize is that there's so much that happens. There's so much growth that happens in the brain from the time they're born. I mean, when you think of all the transformation, that happens from the time they're born to just 2 years old, and then from 2 years old to 5 or 6, they're growing at such a rapid rate. Well, part of that growth happens with movement. It happens visually. There's all sorts of things that happen within the brain itself, and it's related to other parts of their body. And so we want to have our children be physical and active. That's why we want to get them off of all the technology and the devices, especially these littles. We don't want them having a ton of screen time, because it's crucial that they develop in multiple ways in order for their brains to develop properly, to even begin the skills of reading. And so one of the things that they need to do is they need to develop memory. And so things that you might not think about as reading, it actually impacts their ability to read, which is why we take a developmental approach, especially in the younger years. You'll see lots of different activities built in. It's also part of the Wowza brain. When Anna had mentioned it helped her student who has dyslexia. But it can also help any student, whether they're struggling to read or not, just to help develop parts of the brain that helps them remember and to make certain connections. And so really starting back in with stepping stones begins that process of developing the parts of the brain that need to be developed in order for them to learn how to read. So I would say that right off the bat, before I talk about our hands-on. So from stepping stones, they're going to move into Simply K. Simply K is where they're going to learn the different letters. They're going to learn how to trace. And again, when you are working with your hand to trace and your pencil, and you're learning those skills, it's developing the brain. Movement is actually an important part of getting these things deep into the memory. And so writing is an important part of reading, even though they may seem like they're separate subjects. And so you're going to transition then from Simply K into Foundations Phonics. That course is going to pick up where Simply K leaves off, and helps your student understand the letter sounds. There's practical hands-on practice on days that they're not actually having a formal lesson. And I would say don't disregard those activities, because they are brain building. But we do take a strong phonetic approach. We do bring in sight words for the most common words, or those words that can't be sounded out phonetically, because the English language is one of those strange languages that don't always follow the exact rules. So we do have some words like that that are sight words. Now, because students develop at those ages very differently, you have a student, I had one student that taught himself to read at age 3. And then I've had other students that, 6, 7 years old are still struggling. And so our students do develop at different rates. And so what we did is we gave two different schedules for Foundations Phonics. So you can use that as a full year, or say in kindergarten and take it a little slower, or you can do half the year in first grade and then go into level 1 language lessons. So we would recommend that you don't push it, that you don't try to push your student quickly, because you can actually delay the reading process by moving too quickly. And so we prefer, what we would recommend is to do the first semester, do Foundations Phonics, do the second semester of language lessons. And so the language lessons is going to start adding in some of the other parts of communication, which includes more writing, just starting to introduce them to spelling, introduce them to nouns and verbs and other parts of communication. And so by the time they get to language lessons, they're ready to start adding in more parts of communication while continuing to strengthen their reading skills. So I hope that's the answer they were looking for. I hope I gave the right what they were looking for in that. But that's how we transition, but we build into it a lot of practical brain building developmental activities, which helps students, whether they're special needs, advanced, or average, right on par. Those I can't say enough about the developmental side of what we do. And I think if Anna's microphone is still working, she can attest to that.
Anna, you want to try? You're muted right now.
I'll try. It doesn't work. So the developmental approach is appropriate. I had a daughter reading at 4 years old, and my youngest is 5, and she just started Simply K. I mean, they're so different. They're black and white. And then I have my 11-year-old. My 6-year-old is being better than 11-year-old. It's just how God's created them. What I love about language lessons is that you can use a multisensory approach with it, that everyone says, oh, if your child's dyslexic, use a multisensory approach. You can do that. You can add in the letter, the spelling, the right brain spelling, the words, I forget what we call it. You can add in the right brain flashcards, which have been amazing as well. And you can do so many things with language lessons without feeling tied to the curriculum, where you have to do this or you have to do that. It gave me permission to close the books and teach to my child's style. And that's what I love about language lessons.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Your microphone still is a little iffy, but we love the wisdom that you're sharing. And what you were just sharing reminds me of what Randy says often is James 1:5. If we ask for wisdom, he will give it to us. And so there's no one more prepared than you are as the parent to ask God and receive from God the wisdom for your specific child. And certainly no one loves them more than you do. And I just think it's a beautiful thing to witness as you share your testimonies. So Randy, one of the questions that we have for you is about someone is in Australia and they're having trouble sourcing the curriculum. So what should they do? How can they get masterbooks in Sydney, Australia?
I can't think of the name of the reseller in Australia. Um, if you go to masterbooks.com and submit a ticket at our help desk and ask the name of the reseller in Australia, they will tell you.
Doesn't it start with a K?
Karong. Is it Karong? I
Karong.
think Karong. There's a couple, one in Africa, and my head is stuck on the one in Africa, but I think it's Karong is the distributor. And we also, I think Answers in Genesis in Australia does carry some of our products as well. So those would be two places that you could check.
Great. Thank you, Randy. All right, the next question is for Kristen. And this question is, what do you consider special needs? We have an anxiety and sensory issue diagnosis, and I suspect ADHD, but additionally, we are dealing with grief, family loss, and trauma, leaving an abusive relationship. Would the new book, Thrive, help with any of this?
Yeah, I would look at the sample online, and you'll be able to get a good idea of some of the tools that are available through Thrive. You know, regardless of what you're dealing with, it's always a spectrum. And even within the same diagnoses, you know, students have, you know, variety of differences between each other. And so no two students are going to be exactly alike. How I approach anything that's geared towards the special needs market is I analyze the book as a whole and see what's helpful for my particular child. And so that's what I would recommend, is just seeing, are there tools that will help my particular child with what they're struggling and what they're facing. And I'll tell you, you know, the Lord provides. We have an adoptive son, and he has fetal alcohol syndrome, and also he's autistic. And the Lord has just provided along the way. It has not been easy. You know, there's been a lot of challenges, but I always say we're going to shoot for the moon. And if we get 2 inches off the ground, we're going to celebrate. And so, you know, we try to celebrate the wins, and we just have to trust the Lord. And even currently, the Lord is opening the doors and providing for his needs. And so, you know, that's you, but you have to, they're all so unique. They're like every other student. They have very unique processing issues, very unique abilities. And so I would really encourage you to take a look at the sample of that book that's on our website and see if any of those tools are applicable to your situation.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I'm going to throw this one out, since Anna is having trouble with her mic, but someone else may want to answer this. But the question is, I'm needing a mid-year switch in curriculum for my 8th grade son in science and language arts, and my 5th grade daughter in language arts. Is there something you would recommend? I would also like to do something different for Bible for both of them together. Now, we're not given the information of what they are using, so that we would know what to tell them to switch to or recommend.
I have one for science.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw in a lot of assumptions, like I know exactly what the situation is. But if you're doing a mid-year switch and you're doing a bit of a reset, you probably need just something that's engaging, fun, and easy enough that it's not overwhelming. I would invite you to look at Elements of Faith. And Elements of Faith could be used as a Bible curriculum and a science curriculum. And it's extremely devotional. I promise you that you won't regret switching to Elements of Faith mid-year, and you could easily finish it throughout the course of the year, and it will prepare your student to go into high school. So that would be my tip on the science.
Okay. Anybody else for language arts?
Language lessons for 5th grade. Have to go language lessons for 5th grade.
I would say if they're going to switch into language lessons in 5th grade, that when you get to the 4th quarter, most of that's review. Just pick out the lessons that focus on some things like writing a letter, some things like that. Those are new. They're not review, but most of that 4th quarter's review. So if they just work their way through the first 3 quarters, and then address any areas that they kind of struggle with, maybe pick out some of the review lessons, and you'll be able to get through it a little bit quicker.
Okay. Well, hopefully that answers the question. If you have more details you want to share and get more specific, you can, whoever asked that question, you can send more in. Okay, so the next question is for Randy. I want a rigorous curriculum, but I tend to think that smaller bits of information that build with a stronger biblical foundation is better. What do you think, and do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think we make a mistake with rigorous. We think more is more, and it's not. It's never been more. And studies show that when a student's brain is open, engaged, when their application, their retention is so much higher. And so I can create a rigorous curriculum for anybody, right? You just throw more information, more twaddle, more work, and you call it rigorous. I mean, I could give an algebra book to a 5-year-old and say, hey, here's a rigorous math curriculum. Their brain isn't developed for it. And so a lot of it is the student engaged? Like, are all the brain cells firing, and are they learning, and are they developing? There are certain standards that you just have to follow, right? Like, when a student reaches 9th grade and you begin building a transcript for their high school, there are some things you're going to want to make sure you do: biology and chemistry and physics and like the forensics or the astronomy, a course like that, depending on what your students' goals are. You have to do algebra and geometry, and there's just certain things that you do. But be careful when you say, I want a rigorous curriculum, that it's not just hard for the sake of hard, that it actually is developmentally appropriate, and that it actually builds on the student and good, sound educational science. Kristen was talking about the development of reading. What's interesting, and I love to point to this country, is Finland. They don't even begin to teach students to read until they're in age 7. Up until that point, they like creative play, they like using imagination, they like reading together, but they're not pushing a student. And it's because the brain is developing. And I think every mom here that's been part of education for any amount of time knows that when a student's brain kicks on and they want to learn, you can't hold them back. There's no pushing a student who's ready to learn. Like, they take off. And so that would be kind of my advice. I do think you want a balance of mastery and spiral, in that it's important to learn a skill, like our math lessons for living education. You learn the skill, but then you repeat the skill. So think of it like a toolbox. I have a hammer, a screwdriver, a level, right? Each of these, addition is one and subtraction is the other. But then I come back to a problem, and it's like, okay, what tools do I reach into the toolbox and use? And that application helps solidify the brain, the neural pathways, and helps a student understand the concepts so much better than some of just mastery. Like, there are some curriculums that just teach addition for a whole year and then subtraction for a whole year. The problem is they're not necessarily teaching the critical thinking skills or the abstract skills.
Makes sense. And I was telling Randy today that I talked to a scientist who was getting ready for an interview, and he was kind of slow to respond. And because he is a scientist and knows about the brain, he was telling me that as a young child, his mother didn't want him to go out and talk to people about their family. And so, unfortunately, he was young, his brain was still developing, so he didn't say a word when he left the house. And so he was telling me how that affected his communication skills. And I thought that was fascinating and interesting for what we're talking about today, that it really matters. Those early years really matters. And I'm so thankful to work for a company who's taking all of that into consideration. All right, so the next question is for Kristen. Kristen, this lady says, I work 7 hours a day and my son is only doing math and language arts alone. I just bought America's Story 1. He is in 5th grade. I just opened it and I felt overwhelmed. Any advice on how to make this work for us?
I have worked a lot of the time that I have homeschooled, and it can be a challenge to juggle all the plates. It's not completely fair to expect a 5th grader to be 100% independent. but there's ways that you can help a student continue their education without them being 100% independent, but doing a lot of it on their own. And so I would say that a lot of the issues would be with scheduling. So how does that day work? How does, at what point, what's the system that when your student needs help, that they can get help? So I would recommend that you go over the day's work with your student ahead of time if you're not right there on location to be able to help. And so you probably need some sort of just a schedule where you start off the day with him, going through what he has to do during the day, see if there's any questions, set up a very specific schedule. If there's the ability for him to check in with you partway through the day, might be a good way for him to, jot down all of his questions or put sticky tabs on the pages that he has a question on, and maybe he can ask you all the questions then. Or maybe it's a matter of at the end of the day, just reviewing any questions that he might have, but then again, starting off the day fresh. So I think in your case, it's really about scheduling and finding ways that he can have some support. Another thing is I would rely on the Masterbooks Academy so that he can get that extra layer of having his questions answered in a different way. So my students, I take advantage of the Masterbooks Academy. And so if they need a little extra help before coming to me, they go to the Academy first. So I would recommend just taking advantage of every resource that you have. You may have a website that works, like say Math Antics, that can add an extra layer of support as well. So I would put some of those tools into place. You could also see if you could hire a tutor or someone like that, or another family member. If a spouse isn't available, someone else that could step in and perhaps be a text message away or something like that to help the student and to be able to answer questions.
That is great. Thank you. That's a big question. All right. So our next question is for Danielle. This person says, I have a 5 and 6-year-old. How do I choose curriculum since there are so many options?
Yeah, that's the hard thing. And there's so many good options. So really, I'm not sure if you're wanting like for each particular subject or if there's a certain subject that you're looking at. But for us, for science, I just kind of looked through it and I looked at the samples online and just kind of thought, well, what do my kids like to do? So there's 2 really good options for science for 5 and 6-year-old. And you've got the beginner science and the Let's Talk Science. And for us, we like having some of the experiments to do. And there's like a week in the Let's Talk Science, there's a weekly experiment a lot of times. And it's just super simple. It's nothing like, it's all like, hey, go get some lemon juice and some baking soda kind of thing, stuff that you already have on hand. And they really enjoy doing that. And so I think Let's Talk Science is a fun science to choose. I just kind of picked based on what their interests are and kind of what mine are, because I really like learning with them too. So my story is a really good choice for if you want a little geography and just kind of like around the world community and things like that, sort of a study for that age. My story is a really good one. And then obviously for math and language arts, you should do the placement tests for each of those, which are available online, see where they should start at in those areas. But it's also fun to kind of look like at, we loved Where Faith Grows. That would be a good Bible option for a 5 and 6-year-old to do together. We do our Bible as devotions in the morning with breakfast, and it just kind of works well for us to do that. But yeah, I think I would just take a look and see what is the most interesting and exciting. And again, with the science, I believe on the live today, Kristen talked about the different sciences and what learners, what's best for certain types of learners. Like a more logical learner might like the beginner science better than like a more hands-on learner. Let's talk science is a better option for that. But it is hard to choose. We're doing 2 sciences right now because I couldn't choose. But it works well for us. It's not overwhelming or anything. It's just a lot of fun. So, and as they get older, there's even more options for you to pick from. And it's just fun to pick in electives. And we don't take like art, for example, as your kiddos get older, we do our art, like once every other week, even. We don't stick to the schedule, like we could do because I've learned, I've learned you don't have to. So yeah, just really picking their interest, your interest, and what type of learning styles would best fit their needs at their age, especially. And my other tip is not to get too much, although that's really hard to do as well too. But for a 5 and 6-year-old, don't overload them with too many of the goodies because there are a lot of goodies on the website. So that would be the helpful tip, although I know it's hard, speaking from experience. So I hope that helps a little.
Yeah, great question. Okay, the next question is for Kristen. This lady says, I have a 5th grader who is struggling with reading. I have tried Wowza Brain, and it is such a chore to get her to do the games. Is there something else Masterbooks offers to help guide us to a confident reader? I have not had her tested for processing disorder, but am fairly certain that is the case. And then she also asks about math fact memorization.
Well, if you are suspecting that there's something going on, then you can throw lots of curriculum at it, but you're not going to necessarily, you might not need different curriculum. You might need a different application of the curriculum. And so really you have to get to the root of what's going on and then learn all that you can about that particular issue. And learn how to apply, like, in Anna's case, some of those hands-on type things, she was able to learn a lot about dyslexia and learn how to apply the curriculum to meet her students' needs. And so that's what I would recommend you do. In our case, we knew that fetal alcohol syndrome was the driving force that was affecting our son. And so, we already knew his some of his history from a real young age after adopting him. And so we were able to get a lot of information, and then we would apply what we knew to how we use the curriculum. And so he needed a lot of repetition. We had to repeat things over and over and over again. Even though he might master it one day, the next day he might completely forget it. And so you just have to learn about all the nuances of the way that your student will learn best. And can I say, bathe it in prayer. Really ask the Lord for wisdom, and he will give you wisdom. Our son, we recently went through a whole battery of testing on him, and they said that he actually performed remarkable considering his level of disability. Academically, he tested in the 5th grade level, and they would not have anticipated that with the depth of disability that he has. And so, that was a real encouragement to me that we got him as far as we possibly could. And that came from us doing our research. And again, just using what we learned about the brain and the way his brain works, and just tweaking the curriculum. At Masterbooks, we encourage you to make the curriculum your own and to take it and change it up and, just apply it to meet the needs of your student. But you can't do that if you don't know what's going on with your student. And so I would encourage you to get to the bottom of what's going on. Until then, you're just kind of guessing at what might work and guessing at what the issues actually are. I would also encourage you that even if a student struggles to learn to read, it doesn't mean that they're always going to, and they may just blossom into an avid reader later in life, or they can just learn to read at the level that they are at and enjoy it. That's what I encourage my son, who is at a 5th grade level. I tell him there are so many books out there that you can learn so much from at a 5th grade level. You can spend the rest of your life learning a lot, even at the 5th grade level. And so, just continue to focus on the enjoyment, and don't get so caught up in their struggles that you fail to enjoy the child that you have and enjoy where they're at and celebrate the wins. As far as multiplication goes, it's a really helpful skill to have those put to memory. But you can actually survive life successfully without ever having mastered your multiplication table using a calculator. Sorry, don't beat me up for that, but encourage it, practice it, reward it, do what you have to do. But at the end of the day, if they fail to memorize them, if they can still do math, it's probably okay.
Great.
Can I piggyback one thing as well? Oftentimes we look at curriculum and we expect the curriculum to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Something that I think is really important, especially for younger students, is screen time. If your student is doing a lot of screen time, that can short circuit as well their attention span, because they're in kind of a dopamine hit cycle, and schoolwork can be very hard, and it's hard for them to concentrate. The other thing is diet that we look at, just especially for some students. It's funny, I listened to a podcast today. The doctor scanned over 250,000 brains, and you would do a test, and then you do it in resting, and he was looking at what parts of the brain were firing. The one thing that showed one of the biggest inhibitions to brain function was people who drank orange juice, because the amount of sugar content that they had in their diet. So just being aware that of what impact that can have as well, in addition to everything Kristen said, but our environment, right? Are they getting sleep? Are they eating good? And especially screen time. It's short circuiting a lot of brains right now, and it's best to limit the amount of screen time.
Okay, so the next question is for Desiree. Desiree, can principles of math be done independently?
Yeah, so I've had 2 students use it. The first one, she has done pretty well, and so she used it independently and did well. And then for my second, I was actually a little bit more concerned having him move into it, because there's a lot of reading, and it's reading is not his favorite subject. And so I was a little bit concerned there. But at that time, we had the Academy videos, and so those really helped. The Academy videos pretty much go through most of the book. You still need to have the book in order to do the course, and it has just a few other things in there in the lessons, but the videos have been super helpful. So he's been able to do those independently. So I would say yes.
Great. Well, speaking of Masterbooks Academy, we haven't talked a ton about that tonight. So I'd love for us to just kind of go around our Brady Bunch room here and talk about which Masterbooks Academy course you have enjoyed the most, or what you recommend, or one that you think people might not know we have. So let's start with Danielle. Do y'all use it?
We do. Some of our favorites are the paleontology and zoology courses. Mr. Brian is loved by everyone in our family, including when my husband sometimes makes it down for lunch. If he's working from home, he's fascinated by what he has to say. So while it certainly isn't needed to complete the courses, I highly recommend both of those courses for sure, because they just add so much more depth to what you're already learning. And it's very interesting, and all the kids enjoy watching him. We liked the Where Faith Grows. I think it's level 1 that's on there. And that was really good. It was fun to have that read as well. And we're doing PE with Mr. Stamper, with Coach Stamper. The kids love his videos. They love when he completes a task on the video and then there's like a cheering squad that goes up, and they just like, that's so much fun. So we're doing PE. And we started sign language this year. It's very easy for everyone to follow along and and do that as well. So that's a lot of fun. And what else are we doing? Oh, my son, we added on for level 4 math. We that was a new one this year. And so he's really enjoying that. He likes having the stories read to him at the beginning of each lesson instead of having to read it himself. And it's just really it just adds a lot to his understanding as well. So those are the ones we're currently doing. But I highly recommend the science courses with Mr. Bryan. Those are all, and I see that he does like all the way through a lot of different classes. So I'm just super excited to keep going with his stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Bryan, especially for elementary paleontology, he's in his mobile museum,
Yes.
dinosaur type creation museum. And so I think that's fascinating for even adults just to see what he's showing and what that looks like.
I think it's an unfair advantage that he has.
Yes.
Because us other authors, we can't compete with that. I mean, come on. How do you compete with your own dinosaur museum with animatronics? I mean, you know, it's really hard as an author to be able to put up a course that competes with that.
I would agree, but you've got chickens and donkeys, many donkeys, right? Like there's bound to be a way to incorporate them.
Maybe I'll have to figure out a way to incorporate in some of the language lessons. I don't know, but you know, a mobile creation museum is pretty hard to beat. I have to agree with Danielle with that.
Absolutely. And Anna, whose mic isn't working very well, she has sent a chat saying that she is enjoying, or her family enjoys, the Where Faith Grows and language lessons level 1.
Yeah, she said that my son-in-law won my girls over. He's a professional musician, and he was kind enough to do both of the songs in there. And Anna's girls did. Oh, I have some of the cutest pictures of them enjoying that course, and it was just a lot of fun. But my son-in-law was recovering from COVID, and so he was just such a gem that he was willing to do those songs for us for language lessons 1. But Anna's daughters are so cute.
They are. I love getting pictures of them to use in my marketing stuff. Desiree, what about your family? What have you used with Masterbooks Academy?
Well, for us, it's probably been the most that I've appreciated would be the upper math courses and the lab sciences, because that has really helped our day. Because I have a younger student who was still learning to read. And so my older students, I paired them together if I could, and then they would watch the videos and then do the labs together. And so that really took a lot off my plate. And, you know, it can be a challenge when, for our family, kind of our spread has been difficult to kind of combine. We did a little bit at the end, but just, you know, how, you know, us as moms, we're going in all sorts of directions. We're having to switch from teaching to read to teaching algebra potentially, or, you know, talking about more serious worldview type of questions for your high schoolers. So it can be a challenge to be switching back and forth between the different needs.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Well, Randy, since you are the brain behind the courses that come into Masterbooks Academy, tell us about your favorites and the things that you want us to know what's going on in there.
So I've had the opportunity to go out and recruit instructors, and we've had some gems in there. The art course that went up this year, I think, is exceptional. She does such a good job of teaching, and it has such a godly spirit. I love that. The sign language I love the sign language course. I love the photography course. I get to watch the videos and I don't have to actually do the work. So it's like ideal for me. And but I did get a lot out of the photography course. I've learned some signs and enjoyed that. The music courses that we have are phenomenal. The worship piano, the songwriting, the classical piano, the ukulele is probably our all-time bestseller. All of the instructors do such a good job. So I love the enrichment and I love the standalone courses. There's some like Jason Lyle. If you're looking for an intelligent apologetics person to follow, Jason is brilliant. And his logic course is exceptional. He's very good at taking very hard concepts and breaking it down. So I love that. The math lessons for living education. Angela's son-in-law, Matt, does those. I think he does a phenomenal job offering that. Kate Lou Pannon was the first instructor that I worked with, bringing her courses in, and she kind of helps pilot a lot of the academy, but I think she does a great job. So I'm going through them all, but I enjoy the concept was removing friction points. Like that's so important to us, right? Because over the years, people would be like, I can't homeschool, it's too hard. And a lot of times it's just an adjustment and it works. In the academy, like my son was learning long division, and what saved us was math lessons only had 3 long division problems versus the school that I went to had like 40 pages of long division problems, right? My brain was like overload. And then having an outside source come in and just give some tips on this is how you can move through this. So I think the academy is kind of it's growing and we're continuing to add courses all the time.
And I'm amazed that we have all the music courses. I think that's such a gift, such an affordable thing to do. Instead of having to leave home and go have piano lessons somewhere else and having to figure out the schedule and the cost of doing that. I think this is so much more affordable. So we're going to wrap up tonight. We're through with our questions. If your question was not answered, we invite you to post those questions in the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group or the Masterbooks app. These ladies are going to be quick on the draw to answer your questions. There are other ladies, homeschool moms in those groups who have experience who can answer them too. And every week, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central, we do a homeschool Q&A. And then also on Thursdays, right, Randy? There's something Thursdays at 3?
At 3 o'clock, we do a teaching tip most weeks.
Right. Yep. So there's so much experience. So many of these ladies have a background in education and have found homeschooling to be the best fit for their families. I think that's such a testimony to homeschooling in general, as well as Masterbooks making life so much easier than they expected it to be when they were going to be a trained teacher in the school setting. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the fact that the next generation has you as their parents, has you as their teacher. I think that the Lord surely is smiling down on your choices, your sacrifices. We just want to bless you in the name of Jesus with all the goodness that God has for you, that heaven would be opened up and pouring out what you need. And we are confident because of the testimonies that you've heard tonight that God will give you wisdom when you ask him, liberal wisdom, and he will resource your family. And the body of Christ is an amazing group. And our groups, the platforms I mentioned before, the app and the Moms of Masterbooks, those groups are perfect places for you to be encouraged, for you to receive prayer, for you to get more answers for what you need for your own specific family with your own specific challenges, obstacles, and unique giftings. We're so thankful that we have such a wide representation of people who are fearfully and wonderfully made. You, the parents, are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you have your own giftings for teaching, and your students do too. And I'm just so excited about the future because your children are going to be leading and going to be making such a difference in bringing forth the gospel into that generation, and we certainly need it. Randy, is there anything you'd like to add before we close out tonight?
I just want to recap the sale is Cyber Monday, the day after, or the Monday after Thanksgiving. The sale starts at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Prices this year will automatically be on the website. They'll be changed. And if your cart is already full, be sure to refresh your cart before you check out. And one thing that just kind of sits, we talk about reset, and a lot of time, you know, you're in the battle, right? And you may be just like a little bit discouraged. I think a lot of us that have homeschooled, we've had those seasons, but I would just encourage you to stay the course. You know, as I look back over our journey and I think about the ups and the downs, and there is no greater pleasure as a parent than to see my kids serving the Lord. We have kids serving in ministry. We have kids serving the Lord in so many different ways in life, as authors, and all of that is a testimony to the Lord giving us the privilege of being able to homeschool and be part of the homeschool community. And we're so blessed by that. And so if you're in a place tonight where it's like you're on the fence, I would just encourage you not to give up. And any way that we can help, there's so much encouragement in the groups. Jennifer mentioned the Masterbooks app. That is my favorite church. And when we've gone through different seasons of life, posting prayer requests, and we're very specific in the app that we ask people not to do anything but just to offer prayer. They don't offer counsel or anything. They just pray. And we have seen miracles in our family of people praying and the Lord moving on our behalf. And so I would encourage you to go into the app if you're not part of it and post. The Moms of Masterbooks is an exceptional community as well. We have over 40,000 moms in that group, and the moderators, Anna and Desiree, and the team that run that, Danielle's part of that as well, are exceptional at caring for the needs of the moms that we have in there. So we hope that you're blessed by this, and what an honor and a privilege it is for us to serve your family and this community.
Well, we're getting lots of comments, lots of thank you for your time and energy, your service, your wisdom, your insight. It's been a blessing to be here. We are so grateful that you were all here. Thanks to the Masterbooks team, all the work you did to stay up late tonight, to do all the homeschooling and all the parenting that you've done, and to be here with us. We hope you have a great night. Remember to ask your further questions in the Masterbooks app or the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group. We're going to call it a night. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.